I mean, I wish I could just, I mean, I wish I could just act as I would, as if I did when things were good, and if you just, but I know that's impossible.
Do you think that we have to change our thinking or our belief system a little bit in order to go forward?
Well, from what you said earlier, yeah, I guess so.
What would be the first step that we could take to go forward?
Maybe if you just let go of that grand vision of a perfect marriage, it would help.
Well, that seems very important to her. But if I can rephrase your statement, maybe if she modified a little bit of her expectation on what the relationship should entail, that might help.
It might.
What do you think about changing your thinking and some of your perception about each other in the relationship? What do you think has to be done there?
I guess I should really try and hold back when I'm putting him down or jumping in. I guess I should try and hold back.
And what would you do during that period of time? You have any idea?
Write it down like I am.
Well, maybe, but I think one of the other things that we could do is take a look at some strategic exercises for processing our thinking different.
What does that mean?
Well, I think that, and this is probably a good time to educate a little bit to the model that we use, that individuals develop beliefs or schemas in their mind about relationships, what they should be and how they should function. And when they meet each other and they start to move, they kind of shape those perceptions of what the relationship should be like. And in this particular case, I think you developed some expectations of the way it should have gone. And when they were violated, it put you in a tailspin. So your thoughts started to go the thoughts started to come out like, oh, I never thought he would do this. I can't trust him. I'll never be able to trust him. And I think some of Roger's thoughts were, I can't do anything right. She'll never trust me. She's just going to keep hammering at me. And so we get gridlocked where we can't move.
I started to feel I couldn't do anything right even before the
Right. What's more important is that you started to believe that you couldn't do anything right. And as long as you believe that, there's become ingrained beliefs, you get locked into that style of thinking. So we have to break things up a little bit or modify them. And I realize that there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of pain in that, but if we don't do that, you're going to get stuck where you're at. That's the big gear in terms of making change. I don't want to ignore the emotion because that's very important. And certainly we're going to have to take a look at modifying some behaviors. But before we do anything, we're going to have to change some of our perception. We're going to have to broaden our scope a little bit. And one of the things that I think is important is for us to understand that, if we don't do things together and plan them and look at how to deal with some of the unforeseen that come up, we're putting ourselves in jeopardy. For example, we decide that we're going to work more, put more overtime in. I think you have to also look at the downside. That means there's more time away from each other. So to prepare or inoculate yourself for that type of impact of being away and how to cope with that is very important. And number two is the other thing of looking at expressions and communications, which I sense is not that great right now.
Can I say something?
You can say anything you'd like.
I feel, Dr. DeTilio, that he leaves me no choice. I do try and say things in a careful way, but he leaves me no choice.
You said that a couple of times to me, and I think that one of the things that you need to think about is that you have more choices than you're aware of. You put yourself in a position where you have no choice. You have plenty of choices. As long as you lay it on him, you're always going to be immobile. You have plenty of choices, and one choice is to leave. You don't have to stay in this relationship. You choose to stay, and that's your choice. And there are other choices in terms of how to look at things, and we're going to look at them right now. I want to pass out a couple of things to you that I think will be helpful. And I don't want to inundate you with a lot of paperwork, but these are kind of important. And a big part of our work together is going to involve some reading, which I hope you're not opposed to. First of all, there's an excellent book. It's titled After the Affair by Janice Abrams Spring. She's a colleague and a good friend of mine. And she wrote this terrific book for couples to read after there's been an infidelity. And I recommend that both people read it because it helps you go through the stages of healing and what to expect. That's an excellent book. And there are a few other books that we'll talk about a little bit later that I might have you read just to keep your mind fluid in terms of thinking in a direction that we need to go in. But the basic model that I was talking about states that, with these belief systems or schemas that we develop, as a result of those come distortions, or we call them cognitive distortions, and that we have a tendency as human beings to think in certain terms. And if you look at the handout that I gave you, there are eight to 10 of them here. The first one is arbitrary inference, which is a conclusion drawn from an event in the absence of supporting, substantiating information. And it gives you an example of what happens and what an example of that distortion is. Another is selective abstraction, in which information is perceived out of context. And that happens quite a bit with the two of you. I think when you read these, you'll see overgeneralization, magnifying and minimizing certain aspects, personalization. Dichotomous thinking is a big one I heard a couple of times with the both of you. I'll never be able to be trusted, or I'll never be able to trust him. It's all or nothing.
So how will addressing these cognitive distortions help restore our trust, the respect? I don't see the...
It's going to become a process of monitoring what we say to ourselves and what we do, and restructure it a little bit so that we take some of the edge off of how we come off to our partner, and scrutinize it a little bit over the things that go through our mind. For example, if you're engaging in dichotomous thinking, it's an either-or thing. Very little aspects are ever all or nothing, black and white. We live most of our lives in the shades of gray. So to say, I'll never be able to trust him, that's kind of an erroneous statement. Because the fact of the matter is you may be able to trust him. It may take some time, but...
But with all respect, this just seems to me like a bunch of psychobabble. We have cognitive distortions and schema and lists of little exercises and readings every week and all the rest of it. But I just don't see how this is going to be very helpful.
Well, you know what? As far as the psychobabble...
Are you married? You actually...
You can't ask him that. He's a doctor.
Why did I ask him that? Do you have a bunch of textbooks and you sort of try to learn about these things, or do you have any idea what it is that...
To answer your question, am I married? Yes. Do I have a bunch of textbooks? More than I need.
You happy?
It's important for you to know that I'm married?
Well, I just don't want to be judged by someone who, not that you've necessarily done the bad things that I've done, but maybe, I don't want to be judged by someone who's never even had to deal with.
Well, I think it's fair. I'm not here as a judge. I'm here as a facilitator.